So I see this article, it's not that long, and this is Van Jones. He's a CNN, um, I believe he has his own time that he's on CNN and he reports on various social issues. And so Van Jones, here in the article, it says that he's disappointed by the Chauvin sentence, and it's a punch in the gut. And I'll say this right away, that I agree with Van Jones being disappointed. I feel the same way. I feel disappointed because I'm going to tell you my reason for this. Because I know a lot of people feel like 22.5 years, 2 decades, more than 2 decades is a lot of time, but it isn't, because he gets to have his life and he gets to stay incarcerated, and we don't know if they won't try to see if they can retrial. I know they denied it, but it could happen again. He could he could try to see if he could get a lawyer to go over and do a retrial, and so he has options, and George Floyd didn't have any options. And if you look at the scenario of the situation, here he is. He's um, an officer of the law, and he's white, and he's using his badge as a way to abuse the power that he has over people who are powerless. And so I know some people are saying that George Floyd had a past and a history that was a checkered history, but also that officer had a past and it wasn't great either. So that doesn't mean that one deserved to die because of the fact, for the simple mere fact that this one doesn't have the power or authority to speak up for himself or to defend himself. And so he was in a situation where he was powerless. And so the story would have been different, I'm sure, if he had been a little bit more aggressive towards Derek Chauvin. And then you would have saw a lot of comments. Basically, you already see some of them now where he didn't really put up too much of a fight, and people are bringing up the man's past, what kind of involvements he had with law enforcement in the past, what kind of person he was, his character, as if they know him on a first name basis. And so this man, clearly you can see he was going through a lot. If he goes in a store and he has what they claim was, or alleged was, a counterfeit or a fake $20 bill. And so that's really not a lot to die over. And I really believe that all of this boils down to it was premeditated. It said that he had knew him before, and from George being I believe he was a security guard or something somewhere in a nightclub or a bar, and he had crossed paths with Derek Chauvin in the past. And so there was something there between them, and I believe he probably already had it out for him. And when he saw him again, he despised of him, and he was going to use his power and exert it in a way negatively to end this man's life. And so he's getting sentenced 22.5 years, and he's able to have options. He's able to make phone calls. He can still reach people through mail. He has options, as to where this man has no more options. He is gone. His life was snuffed out. And I really do believe that Derek Chauvin should have got life. in prison. Because if you flip this whole story around, if it had been maybe a black officer that killed a white man, you wouldn't hear the end of it. No matter what that white man's past was, you would have heard an outpouring of cries and moans and bitching about this black officer. He needs life in prison for killing this poor white male who had nothing else but himself and his word and whatever was left of whatever he had. If he had no weapons, why did this black officer take his life? He should be banned from the force. And just think of how that story would have been if it had been a whole nother scenario where the tables were turned and the officer was in fact a black officer and he had attacked a white male that was down on his luck and in a store with a fake $20 bill. And maybe he had a checkered past but he was struggling. You would have seen a whole nother scenario play out altogether, and it wouldn't have been where he would have received 22.5 years. He would have gotten life for killing that man. And so I believe that that's the way this should have played out, but it didn't, unfortunately. And so you have people that are satisfied with 22.5 years, but what that's saying is he still has options. He still has a voice. He still can speak out from behind wherever he is at. He still could probably get a retrial. I know people saying, well, he it's done. They sentenced him, but you don't know the type of support that he might have. Being so he's white, he was on the force. He also had money, I believe, in retirement. And so somebody is going to secure that money if it's still there. I'm sure he has other family members that are supportive and other people that he knows that are supportive of him. And he probably is in touch with some really good legal team that will support him all the way through this. So I don't know if there is a chance of him ever reopening everything. They denied it this time, but it's not to say that they won't deny it the next time. And so he could even possibly get a shortened sentence if he has a really good legal team that sticks with his case and tries to figure out how to change things. And so people dancing around thinking this is done, I don't see that it's done, really. That's my feelings, that's my opinion, and that's what I'm going to say about that. I just feel like right now is not the time to be happy because a man lost his life over someone who just utterly despised of him, and it wasn't so much of what he was supposedly or allegedly did so much as the race issue of it. And I really do believe that some of these officers, if not most of them, if they have a badge and they have this much power, a lot of people are in danger. And if you got officers that have pre-bias, they're able to pass their background checks or their mental evaluations and get in there on the force and then exert their power that they have over innocent people and take lives. And that's what we've been seeing. This is a serious problem. This one incident does not fix or solve all of the issues that are going on. And so we've been seeing, even after this George Floyd incident, black people incidences where they've been beaten almost within an inch of their life, or they've been killed, or they something horrible ends up happening. So this is not the time to jumping around and dancing and partying and getting excited over 22.5 years, because you and I know that if he had been a black officer, he would not only lose his job and be banned from the force, he would probably never be able to work anywhere, and they would be trying to kill him. He also would have life in prison, never to see the light of day, unless it was from behind bars, if that. And so for people to sit up there and think that this is over, it isn't over. It's actually heightened now. You see the disrespect that's out there. They had statues to memorialize what incident had occurred and to try to show, hey, this was a turning point. You had a man who was really going through something, and he didn't have the greatest past, but he didn't deserve to die like that. And then it was also a symbol of how most African Americans are treated when it has to do with law enforcement. If you're, pulled over by quote unquote the wrong officer. And so for stuff like this to happen, and for people to say, oh, we got our justice, you did not get your justice. Because the way this works here is you have judges too, also, and you have officers, and all of them, somehow they're all connected. And so people think that, oh, it's over, but it is not over. And so you don't know what they're talking about and what they're deliberating about in the background. There could be this moment where they look like they threw the book at him, but then later you'll see that number change, or you'll see a retrial, or you see somebody coming out and some other incident will happen to someone else. And we've already saw that where one guy, he was pulled over from coming from work around 2 in the morning in Inglewood, which is not very far. It's from the vicinities of where most of the people I know reside. And so it just seems very scary that when it's so close to home that you have people that will just pull you over, and you'll have 7 officers beat you until you can't even breathe. And you guys are jumping around and dancing because this man, he's able to keep his life, and he can live out his life, but somebody else wasn't allowed to live out the rest, or whatever life they had left, exacerbated by the pandemic and all these other social issues that pretty much put people in a vicarious situation. How can you dance around and be excited about this? There is no excitement to be had. So this article is Van Jones saying that he's disappointed, which I agree, by Brendan Morrow, staff writer. And so I know Van Jones I haven't necessarily been a particular fan of his, and but I have to say his disappointment, I equally share the same disappointment, because it's true. So CNN commentator Van Jones is very disappointed over the prison sentence of Derek Chauvin that he received for the murder of George Floyd. So a judge sentenced Chauvin, a former Minneapolis officer, 22.5 years in prison on Friday after he was convicted of murdering Floyd. According to Associated Press, with good behavior, Chauvin could. This is where you guys need to stop jumping around and dancing. So, with good behavior, Derek Chauvin could be paroled after serving 2/3 of his sentence. That's about 15 years, maybe sooner than that, because he was on the force and he has friends in high places. I'm very sure of that. So Jones expressed disappointment on CNN over the sentence and argued it was too light. It was. He should have got life. So very disappointing, Jones said. 15 years? I know people doing 15 years for nothing. And I mean, for victimless crimes of drug possession, what this man did, there should have been the maximum of the maximum. Exactly. My thoughts, exactly. So Jones added that while he didn't think the sentence would spark outrage, he argued it was still a punch in the gut because this guy's life was worth more than just 15 years. And so, what is that saying about how they feel about black people when they're murdered by police, when they're killed, when they're abused, when they're pulled over and shot for nothing, when they're told, oh, I thought it was a taser, when you have a cell phone in your hand and you get gunned down and shot not two, three, four, five, but maybe six, seven, 18 times. You just saw a man, he was coming from work and he wasn't bothering nobody. They pulled him over for what they call, I believe they said he was straggling the lines or something like that. Just an excuse to pull the black man over. They beat him, a gang style beating from 7 sheriff officers in Inglewood. And you guys are jumping around happy because this man could get out. He could probably not even see doing 22.5 years. He just got sentenced that. That doesn't mean he's going to do it. So anybody that knows anything about the law should not be jumping around because this was not justice at all. And I'm saying that, and even Van Jones, he sees. And anybody else who knows this system knows this was not right. And so black folks are too quiet, too soft, and too scary to speak out on issues like this. Because if it was white people and you did this to them, you'll never hear the end of it. And I'm saying it just like that. So if you don't like what I'm saying, then this ain't the channel for you because I'm not going to sugarcoat nothing because this was wrong. This man lost his life and he is gone. He can't fight or defend himself in court. He can't get a sentence reduced or nothing, none of that. His life was taken. He is not coming back. And then to make matters even worse and add insult to the injury, they try to memorialize the situation, and then you have a well-known, which they weren't afraid to put the name of their organization, of their hate group, and spray painted in white on the man's statue. Then you have comments coming from all over the places talking about he was a criminal and you're worshiping idols. No, you guys worship Donald Trump. You made a statue in gold of Donald Trump and you worshiped it. And you guys wear hats and you wear clothes saying Trump 2020 and you're going around saying that he won an election that he lost and you know he lost. And then on top of that, you have one of the AG's attorney generals straight up forward saying that he lost and it was nothing but bullshit. So for this right here to happen, this ain't time to party, y'all. They said that racism is a public health crisis. It's a national health crisis. It's more than that. That's why all those officers that you see, they say it's a police shortage because it's a lot of corruption in there. A lot of those officers are angry because they can't. They're thinking now, oh, they're putting some of us on notice because you got some of them that are being harassed within the force by other officers, racialized, and then you have other officers who wanted to exert this type of racial violence because that's how they exert their power to do wrong to people who haven't done nothing to them. It's easy to lie and get in there and pass those background checks and pass those mental evaluations so that you can use that badge to exert your racial hatred towards black people and murder them, and you can stand behind your gun and your badge and say, "Oh, I thought he had something. I thought he was moving. I thought he was reaching for something." So they got people in there who have racial bias, and that's the reason why those people are mad, because they didn't like to see that he even got caught and held accountable to some degree, but it wasn't full accountability. I will tell you that Derek Chauvin did not get full accountability for what he did. He could get, like Chauvin, Jones, Van Jones said, he could get 15 years, maybe less, because there's a lot of corruption in there in that justice system. The pinnacle only swings one way. There's no balance in there. So Jones added that while he didn't think the sentence would spark an outrage, it should have sparked outrage. It should have. Right now, nobody should be happy about none of this. Really, this is the okie doke. That's what they tried to give you. And this ain't something to be happy about. So we get mad and hurt other black people instead of sticking together and looking at shit like this and trying to face it head on and say, hey, this ain't justice right here. This is not justice. So anyway, by no means whatsoever is this justice. So it says it's a punch in the gut because the guy's life was worth more than 15 years. I agree. And he hoped the sentence would send a message to law enforcement that you can't do this type of stuff or you're never going to come back home. And so CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Hoying agreed. Of course, while the sentence was serious, he felt it was light and that Derek Chauvin should have received more time than just 22.5 years, because he can go back and get that retried. He just denied him in court for the time being, but that doesn't mean he ain't gonna rear his head again. Look at Trump. He trying to come back and do campaigns again so he can start his shit. So it goes on to say CNN legal analyst Jennifer Rogers pointed out that the sentence itself was not 15 years but 22.5 years, but she added, I don't think that it was light like you all do. I do think it was light. You just saying that because ain't nobody shooting people in your group. So like that, and getting away with it. So, and I said it, yeah, I said it. But Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison said Friday that the sentence was one of the longest a former police officer. Yeah, because they never hold them accountable for nothing. They always are looked at as decorated officers, and there's like click within there. And so it says that that's the longest that a police officer has ever received for use of deadly force, adding that this is not justice, but it is another moment of real accountability. And that's basically what I'm saying. He was put on notice. There's that accountability factor in it. And I believe that's the reason why a lot of people dropped and quit the force. Because see, when they were in the force before this stuff went down, they were able to exert their racial bias towards folks and profile people and do stuff. But now that this happened, this is doing something to them. So now a lot of those officers who was going to use their badge to probably hurt other black people and Hispanic people and all these other people, now they thinking, oh, I could get caught. Oh, I could be held accountable. Oh, I could end up doing time like Derek Chauvin. I quit. I'm going to file for retirement. How long I've been working in the forest? For about 10, 12, I think they after about 10 or a certain number of years, they can get retirement and they can quit and get money, a pension, draw a pension. And so this right here ain't good at all. So it says Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison said on Friday that the sentence was one of the longest former a former police officer has ever received for the use of deadly force, adding, this is not justice, but it's another moment of real accountability on the road to justice. For CBS, President Biden also said Friday that the sentence seemed to be appropriate. I think it wasn't appropriate. I think there should have been more years added to it. And it should not have been just years, it should have been life. That's my, I feel like the way they treat black people, they throw the book at them. They make them do long sentences for a little bit of nothing, for stuff they didn't even really do. So if you don't really do something, and you hear this man, he actually killed, murdered somebody, took a life, and you gonna give him 22.5 years and he can retry that stuff and get his sentence lightened down, maybe even get out. Mm-mm. This ain't justice, not at all. So that's my say so on that whole thing. I just think it wasn't fair at all, really. And I'm gonna be like that, and I'm gonna say that all day long because they don't treat us fair. When they do this kind of stuff, we've been seeing in the news over and over again, black people getting attacked by these same type of officers like this, and nobody's saying nothing. Not enough anyway. So, having said that, I'm gonna let this go.